Goostraba.
Hello, America. This is Dr. Frasier Crane. I'm listening. Roz, do we have anyone on the phones?
Oh, am I Roz?
Yes, you'd be Roz in the scenario.
No, Kramer.
No,
It's not even Kramer.
Kramer. I kind of Frasier
Not
Kramer. I'd watch that. Oh, I mean, we can't because. Hi, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Say Report. I'm your host, Devon Decker, and joining me on the 2-year anniversary of the invention of the term, my host companion, Sejohn Sarowik.
Oh, look at that. What's going on, man?
I finished Frasier, and that's why I wanted to start up by pretending we were Frasier. And then I thought it'd be interesting if someone did a fake Frasier-esque what was the name of his
Podcast?
show?
Like if they did a podcast version of his show that people put episodes out, that would be amazing.
It'd be crazy, right?
Yeah.
Mail that to us so that we own it.
Jeez, sorry, making noise over here. Sorry.
No,
Don't mean to be making.
It's all right.
To be making so much noise. Sorry. I mean,
look at you. Sounds like a nice new microphone you have over there.
what it is it's a nice new beer, Devin. It's a nice new beer.
Oh, was that the homebrew? What'd we end up calling it, big guy?
So it's between Pie and Beer Day, in honor of Pioneer Day, or also in honor of Pioneer Day, which is this Wednesday, is Mormon Fest Destiny was also the other one that I'm going with. I think that might be where I land.
Wow.
It's a cream ale, brewed on the 4th of July and bottled and ready to drink by Pioneer Day, the grand holiday here in Utah, celebrating cowboys and the journey to the west and all that.
You have to go with Pie Beer Day or Pie and Beer Day, whatever that one was.
Pie and Beer Day is what everybody calls Pioneer Day out here that's not Mormon.
Yeah. So
It's
that's a good name for it because, and this is the most Frasier I think I'm ever going to sound, Manifest Destiny, which Mormon Fest Destiny is the play on. It's about westward expansion, so you can't stop in Utah. You have to get to California.
Fair enough.
That's the only thing. It's really
so it should be boiled in Ohio, then the hops are added in Utah, and then it's finally bottled and fermented in California. Is that what the deal is?
Oh my God, that would be wonderful. Now I want to do that too. I mean, we're not a beer company, but a beer company should do that.
No joke though. This is fucking delicious.
I believe it. It's a cream ale.
I was gonna try and be funny about it, and took a sip to just see exactly where this was gonna go, and no, that's just real good.
So the fact of the matter is, last week or maybe even 2 weeks ago, I wanted to talk about the cream ale I had on 4th of July, which it was Genesee cream ale, which I love Jenny Cream. Let's just be honest.
Okay.
But it was strawberry lemonade flavored.
Oh, weird, because we were just talking last night about this particular cream ale and about how there is a fruitiness to it, but we weren't quite sure what fruit we would go with. And we settled on a basic shandy, you just go with lemon or I said grapefruit. Personally, I like getting a little wild, pardon me, but strawberry is an interesting direction. Yeah,
I wish, apparently it's only sold in that area of New York where Jenny Cream is made. Otherwise, it's all I would have been drinking while it was available. Mm-hmm. And the people who brought it back, they let me have one, and then they're like, the rest of them are gold. You don't get to have another.
Yeah, man.
That's
there's
rude.
I love that sort of stuff, man. Drinks like that are just kind of just amazing experiences. There's a beer in Vermont called Hetty Topper. Oh man, I'm gonna get crucified for not remembering it. But the whole thing about it is it's high gravity, brewed up on the mountains and all this stuff. And you're only allowed to buy 1 4-pack of it at every store. So people will literally drive around and follow the Hetty Topper truck from liquor store to liquor store so that they can buy a 4-pack at each one. And people will then stock up on it for the season. It's when you can find a beer like that is in your area, that's unique to the area and just perfect, stick with it, my friends. It'll treat you nice.
Then I'm going to talk about Revival Brewing Company's Clever Girl, which was a Paloma-style sour ale. Had a bit of that grapefruit that, you
Yeah,
wanted to
see?
get wild with. And I've had a can of that, an empty can of that, on the desk since we started up that Borderlands 2 expansion.
Nice.
Just
Very
because
nice.
it reminds me of all the good times and all the better times. Oh, Donny boy, Donny boy, Donny boy. Let's not get sued. Let's start our show again. So, yeah. So, welcome to the Say Report. This has already been more fun than I think I thought we were going to have. Words. I did want to talk about Frasier because I have not done with Frasier what I just completed with Frasier last Thursday. And it feels weird in a way. So, will you indulge me, Sejohn? You don't need to be my Roz. I'm
if
sorry.
anything, this podcast is about indulging you, Devon.
Oh,
Don't worry.
thank you. But it's one of those things where I've always liked Cheers. Cheers is probably my earliest sitcom memories come from Cheers. Okay, the noises are not funny anymore, especially that one makes it sound like you hurt yourself.
It's okay. I'm listening to you. I was about to say, just for reference point, because this started because we were talking about Cheers specifically, and like I started a rewatch at the time. Second season just did the episode where they just have the discussion about why are they together. They break up for a week to figure out why they're together, and he can't say I love you at the end. So just a reference point of where I am compared to what you've done over the last year.
Cool. I also just kind of have it on, and Cheers was sort of passive viewing in a way that makes sense because I've watched Cheers now 3 times through, but it's one of those ones where honestly they are some of my earliest sitcom memories. And when it rolls around to season 6, I literally remember where I was when I watched them for the first time. Nice. The clearest memory is the one where Sam is watching Freddie, Frasier and Lilith's son, and he ends up getting locked out on the balcony. Like, that's one where I'm like, I remember watching You Knew. And it's very weird to like remember that. And then obviously, Frasier, like if we're going to talk about it, is the most successful spinoff of all time. Do you have another argument for that? Something else that might be able to claim that?
The closest would be something like The Jeffersons, but like there's a I don't know how to put this. The Jeffersons survived on a level that you almost can't talk about it in the same conversation as other television shows, because All in the Family and The Jeffersons were so important to TV in a way that I feel like Cheers and Frasier are important in the milieu of history, but of television history, but like not necessarily groundbreaking in terms of like, hey, you can point to the politics that changed because of these shows.
Right. I was actually surprised when I did a deep dive into the Jeffersons as a result of that, live in front of a studio audience special. Right. And to find that they had 9 seasons of the Jeffersons, maybe even 10. Like I 9 is the one where I saw it and I'm like, I would have never believed that this ran for 9 seasons. And that's not in like any negative sort of way. It's just the first show that I think of running forever is MASH. And the reason why we look at the TV landscape and we think of MASH that way is because of how the fact that Goodbye, Farewell, and Amen was the most watched television event, non-sporting, for like ever.
Right.
So it's one of those reasons why I think of MASH as being that one that ran forever and everybody watched. And then I was surprised to learn that Frasier went the same number of seasons as Cheers. and that Kelsey Grammer played that character for 20 years.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't think of it like that. And then, like, other spin-offs, right? Just so that if there is some TV historian who listens to our show, who's going to be, like, my level of, well, you forgot this. Happy Days was a spin-off of Love American Style. Like,
And then Joni Les Chachi.
right.
No, but yeah, I mean, General Hospital had spin-offs that turned into major things that like I can't recall, right? Like there are ones out there, but there's something in particular about the way that Frasier spins off of Cheers and becomes its own animal that I, I don't want to say surpasses Cheers, but becomes is able to outlast Cheers in a way that I think some of these other ones that we've mentioned didn't necessarily outlast their predecessors.
Right. I mean, well, Joey, the spin-off to Friends, only exists because of Frasier. Because they're like, well, a complete change to the show and the locale worked for Frasier. Let's
Right.
try it with Matt LeBlanc. And that didn't work. Surprise, surprise. Actually, it surprises me a little bit that Joey didn't at least get 2 seasons. Like, especially considering the fact that, I mean, well, no, it was 2006, right? So Frasier runs from 93 to 2004, which I did not know. I didn't know that Frasier was still running in 2004. I can't
Yeah,
believe
man.
that. Like, that literally blew my mind when I'm like, this ran for 11 seasons. Oh my goodness. And for the longest time, Frasier, for me, ended with the episode where him and Ross finally hooked up. And that makes sense in a lot of ways because it's the end of season 9. And then apparently I'd seen a bunch of season 10 episodes too, but I just didn't
Didn't
realize
process them.
that they were like after that.
Right.
But yeah, like, so for the longest time, I'm like, and that's a pretty decent story because you can see that Roz and Frasier were like good foils for each other. And it almost works as being a love story between the two of them. And then in a lot of weird ways, at the end of Frasier, their friendship and what they have is a huge part of the show on the whole.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm not entirely crazy for having thought that was like the end all be all.
Right. That was like the build-up, right? Like it was
Yeah.
the Ross and Rachel moment, for sure.
Well, or the Sam and Diane moment to actually borrow from the trope namer. But watching it, I mean, so I was a Cheers guy, and I've talked to other Cheers people, and they were all so vehemently against Frasier. And that's why I decided I've watched Cheers 3 times. I watched Frasier when it was new, and that was before DVRs, and, you literally needed a guide to figure out when things were going to be on, and if it was new or not. Remember those dark days of television?
When TV Guide had a purpose? Yeah.
God, I don't know how TV Guide is still a magazine. Because it still has that guide part, and I'm like, no one's reading you for this. No.
Yeah.
TV Guide had a channel. That's how big it was.
What deal with the devil did they have, right?
Well, I mean, when they went from like guidebook size to magazine size, they really just became the TV version of People. That's sort of what happened.
Fair enough. Yeah. They get all like they get a bunch of really good covers, and then like you open it up and every other page is an ad. Like that's really the secret. But
yes, I mean, we still get it here. My father got one of those free subscriptions that I'm sure I'll be paying off like long after he passes. I'm talking like long after, like 60 years before that Oracle day, knock wood, the TV Guide bills are still going to be coming. And it's like, this is a delinquent account. And I'm like, TV Guide, what did you do?
right.
Whose head do you have in a jar? But so I decided to watch Frasier, and I've talked about it at length, that it makes sense that those people who are against the show are probably remembering the later seasons, when the early seasons, it very much is the same character. And it's funny in season 9 when, they get the send-off of a bunch of Cheers people, Rhea Perlman, George Wendt, Cliff, I know his name too, John Ratzenberger, and Phil, Paul.
Pixar Man. That's what we call him in this house. Pixar Man.
Pixar Man. And he gets that send-off, and when Norm meets Niles, he goes, hey, doesn't he remind you of Frasier when we met him? And there is a level of the fact that Niles sort of filled the Frasier Crane role, and I can understand why people would be like against that. But
Yeah.
at the same time, Frasier wasn't Frasier anymore. He had gone through a marriage. He'd gone through it. Well, he'd gone through a second marriage. He'd gone through a divorce. He'd gone through a life-changing move. Like, it makes sense that he would grow and change. Now, what I have a problem with is how Frasier ended. I did not like the end of Frasier at all.
Mm-hmm.
Especially because
who likes endings? I mean,
the end of Cheers is good. The end of Cheers is hopeful. I'm gonna be honest, like, and that's I think the big problem is I have the Cheers ending to compare this one against, and naturally that's what's gonna happen.
Right.
And in a lot of ways, it's apparent that they knew it was going to be the last Frasier ever, and yet it still ends on a cliffhanger, and it also ends on a cliffhanger that doesn't make sense with the rest of the episode. It's like a last minute, like, oh no, he's going to Chicago to see Laura Linney's terrible character, who built him out of $10,000.
Somebody's coming in to shoot Tony Soprano. Cut to black.
Yeah. Yes. I don't know. I mean, so like, it left me with a sour taste in my mouth, but it was a lot of fun. The biggest offense that Frasier committed is I give them all the credit in the world for, like, knowing that character well enough to say that he had a wife before Lilith, Nanette G. Mm-hmm. And, like, Nanny G shows up in an episode called Frasier's Women, where he's in his, like, a mental prison with Lilith and Diane. Like, that's the other thing. Like, the fact that Shelley Long comes back in Frasier, how could you not say that it's a worthy follow-up to Cheers?
Yeah,
like that's a central part of this. Yeah. I know, no, I'm talking to like the people who say that it's not.
Yeah, I know, no, man. I like, look. For a long time, you and I have had this conversation of like, I didn't hate Frasier. I also didn't have a love of Cheers on the level that you did. So like, I was very much in this neutral area of just like, they're good shows. Like, there's a reason they've been on. There's a reason that character exists for 20 years. And so like, I've been sitting back and enjoying this rewatch of all of this and watching you kind of like come to terms with the fact that, how shall I put this?
It was terrible fucking gatekeeping, which is sort of the plague of the world that we currently reside in.
Right. Yeah. The zeitgeist has a bad undertow to it sometimes. You know, like you got to be real careful that you don't get pulled under, and everybody falls prey to it, man. Like I hope you don't feel like guilty or anything like that.
No. I'm not an insane person, and if I did feel guilty, I would just call KACL between 2 and 5. Western time. What is Pacific time? And I could talk it through. And I could talk it through with a trained professional. Though honestly, he'd say, Roz is going to give you someone to be in contact with about this particular. Yeah, it was just.
How'd you like some scrambled eggs? Isn't that his thing?
Tossed salads and scrambled eggs. Quite stylish. And maybe I seem a bit confused. Yeah, maybe. But I got you, Craig.
The plot point is his jazz career.
I don't know where, like, there are moments where, like, he has to sing, and he's always like, I can't believe I have to sing. And I'm like, you love singing. I've watched your show, Frasier Crane. Yeah, I've also seen the episode of Cheers where they get a karaoke machine. And he just sings the whole episode.
You don't get to do this. You don't get to do the theme song for your own show and then have your character proclaim on screen less than 10 minutes later, I don't want to sing in front of people.
It's just weird. And yeah, but it's I'm so happy that I like got out of my way and watched it again. And I wanted to celebrate that here. Especially something also bad happened this weekend. That I don't really want to talk about, but you're going to get to like regale me with Comic-Con stuff after I tell you about the bad thing that happened this weekend, and I'm excited for that. So I saw Stuber.
Is that the bad thing that happened?
That's the bad thing that happened. I mean, there are people out there, but they're like, he's going to say the Lion King. The Lion King is coming.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm sure there are people out there. You're not wrong, but no. So Stuber. So I've heard it's the death of feminism.
What?
I don't know, some right-wing nut job like decided on Breitbart to talk about how Stuber, as a comedy that is supposed to be making fun of toxic masculinity, proves that people don't want to see quote unquote feminist comedies. And I didn't know how to take that conversation at all.
I saw the movie, and it's also not a comedy about toxic masculinity.
It's that conversation that dudes like to have about like progressive artists. Like think about it like the Ghostbusters 2016 conversation, where everybody had to have an opinion on whether or not it was a good or not move for feminism to make a movie like that for various reasons. When at the end of the day, I don't think anybody involved was trying to be outright like political in the statements they were making, just like, hey, you can't do this and not make a political statement. And so like it's one of those weird things where people attribute a lot more to an idea than I think the artists intended. And there's a conversation to be had there about artist intent. But I think because you look at a guy like Kumail Nanjiani, who is very progressive in his politics and very open about that progressiveness, and I think people saw this move that he made in making Stuber, and when I say people, I am pointing to a very select group, saw that he was making a comedy about basically making fun of this idea of masculinity and what it's like to be like this, to have this toxic masculine figure enter your life when you're not that, when you're not that. And again, I get attributing more to this than the artistic talent I think it intended.
That's also like totally not the story. I mean,
Tell me the story.
I will say that. All right. So I'm gonna like spoilers, ripping off the Band-Aid. I hated Stuber. I hated it. I like lost. It was one of those I lose faith in humanity after watching that film experiences.
Oh man, I didn't really have an interest in seeing Stuber before this conversation started, and now it's suddenly building.
Yeah, no, I get that, but it like I had plans for after the movie, and I'm like, I just want to go home. Like I don't want to do anything anymore. Because that exists in the world. So Stuber is the story of like that's the hardest thing for me is saying that it's the story of, because the script is awful. The script is not good at all. And honestly, the saving grace for me about this film was at the end where I saw that it was not written by Kumail Nanjiani. Because there was part of me that thought that he had also constructed this. Like, I don't know. I heard, like, people talking about, like, he had driven Uber and all this other stuff about what he was doing before his big break. And I'm like, oh, was he the, like, creative force behind this? No.
It's the Seth Rogen conundrum. You got to be careful when you go into a Seth Rogen movie, because a lot of people will just attribute everything he does to, like, him being the creative force behind it. And then it turns out that, like, no, like, 60% of what that dude does is written by other people. He just shows up to be the funny dude. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was very like, it soothed me a little bit, like the tiniest bit, like a grain of soothing was dropped into the soup of seething anger. That I'm like, oh, so it wasn't him who wrote it, because it would also be amazingly hard to believe that he just won an Oscar for best screenplay and then came out with this.
Right, of course.
So the problem is I don't know whose movie it is. Based upon what a film is supposed to be and what we're taught of narratives, it is David Bautista's movie.
Okay.
Because he's the person that we're introduced to first and who has like a real like plot journey sort of laid out in the beginning. He plays an LA police officer who requires glasses to see, which is weirdly a big part of this movie. I did not think it was going to be as big a part of the movie as it turned out to be.
Because he's a man and he can't wear glasses, Devon.
No, he wears glasses and he is complete. Like if that were a thing, Sejohn, then it would make sense. If
Why is it plot significant if it's not considered a flaw?
he doesn't consider it a flaw. It's not like in the beginning they get into an elevator and he's trying to find the floor, and his partner goes, "Just put your glasses on." because then like it becomes this thing where they're a necessary crutch for him, but he is resisting them, right? Along the way with this synopsis of Stuber, I guess I'm gonna also fix the movie a little bit.
Yeah,
Because
it's gonna be hard for me to parse out what's the movie and what's you just making it better.
okay, so it's he wears his glasses. He has no problem wearing his glasses. They're good-looking glasses. They're reminiscent of what Tony Stark wears.
Nice.
So like they're stylish, they're functional, and he is completely on board with the fact that he needs them. Him and his partner go to capture this heroin dealer at the penthouse of a hotel right near the Staples Center. And in the scuffle, he loses his glasses. So then he's like trying to chase, and it's difficult because he can barely see. Like he tries to take a shot, but you know, it's a crowded area. There are civilians, and he really can't make out who's who. But it's all right because he has a partner. So the partner hunts him down, has him at gunpoint, and then, you know, that I took your gun and I killed you with it. So then the narrative jumps 6 months forward, and he's still trying to solve the case, and he's informed by his lieutenant that they're kicking it up to the federal level. Because
is he still looking for his glasses? Please tell me he's still looking for his
glasses.
glasses.
No, he's wearing glasses. He's wearing a new pair of glasses. Yes, Sejohn. Things that, like, if this is a comedy, like, it starts out as, like, this is a real deep story. Like, this is the kind of movie Clint Eastwood would make.
I mean, you know, from the outside, it looks like they're trying to do the Lethal Weapon thing of like, yes, they're like, we're telling a really deep, dark story here, but also it's a buddy comedy. Like, let's get some Shane Blackness going on here, right? Like, is that
to the fact that it ends at Christmas, so you're not wrong about that at all. But you used a word in there that I think Stuber doesn't understand because it's not in its vocabulary, and that word is buddy.
Oh.
So
all right.
So he's told that it's getting kicked up to federal level, and they're like, so why don't you take a couple of days off? And he's like, well, I have to anyway. I'm getting surgery done tomorrow. That surgery turns out to be LASIK eye surgery. And his daughter, played not magnificently, played like disappointingly by Natalie Rodriguez. Is that her name? I'm mad that I don't know her actual name off the top of my head. She played Abby in Abby's. She was on The Grinder.
Oh yeah, she's
Natalie
Tom
Morales.
Haverford's
Natalie
girlfriend,
Morales is her name.
Yeah, in Parks and Rec, she's Tom's like unrequited love. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Natalie Morales, great actress. Like, she plays a role that is just thankless, and also like they kind of want you to be sympathetic to her as the cop's daughter, who the cop never had time for. But before you get to that level, she's straight up saying, I'm not going to be here for Christmas. So it's like, oh, okay, so you're kind of a hypocrite here.
Yeah, but she only became that because he didn't love her.
Yep, but it's hard for me to feel that way if it's not reactionary. Her saying, I'm not going to be here for Christmas.
Exactly. If it's not introduced to you, I mean, storytelling 101, like, there has to be cause and effect. You can't show us the effect first and then explain the cause later, unless you're a better writer than I think this movie had.
Yeah. It's called Order of Operations, and the movie, like, oh, we don't care about that. So she has a gallery show, and he got his LASIK done the same day. She's like, all right, so I've put Uber on your phone, so use that to get to my show. And then we're introduced to Stu, who is Kumail Nanjiani's character.
Wait, is that why it's called Stuber? Because for the longest time, I have not been able to figure out. Because I thought Stuber was just going to be what they call the ride-share app in the movie, and then the previews came out, and that's not the case. And I have been so long trying to figure out why it's called Stuber.
Yeah. So Jimmy Tatro, who, national treasure Jimmy Tatro, like, even in this film, he's able to, like, milk out some actual comedic moments with his ability to act. Right. You will know him as the Stonekeeper's son in Smallfoot.
Love it.
He gets in the car, like, he works with Kumail. So Uber is not Stu's only job. He also works at a sporting goods store, literally just so they can go to the sporting goods store for guns later on in the film.
Nice.
That's it. That's the only reason. So he just got out of that job and he's going to start Ubering to make some extra money. And his first thing is his boss from that store, played by Jimmy Tadro. And he gets in the car and he's like, "What's up, Stuber? You know, because your name is Stu and you drive Uber."
Fuck me. Oh my god. For some reason I was like, is it because it's like a comedy, so like it's like stupid Uber, it's Stuber. No, that's a dumb joke. And like it's an even worse joke than that.
It's an even worse joke that they like make sure you got. Make sure
Might as
you
well,
get
like,
it.
poke you in the fucking ribs, just be like, huh?
The only thing that would make that joke work is if this movie opened up like The Crying Game. And it's like, we're going to explain the title of this movie to you. Don't tell your friends. If it were Lance Reddick saying that. Enjoy. So that's the whole thing. So his eyes are all messed up from LASIK. So in a weird way, it's sort of like one sees the other. No, hear no evil, see no evil. Except there's no hear no evil. It's just the fact that David Bautista is like kind of blind the whole movie.
Man, is that the wait? Oh man, is that the Richard Pryor Gene Wilder movie?
Yes.
Yeah,
where one's deaf and one is blind.
Yeah, you said that and it clicked in my head, and I was just like, wait a minute, I do know that movie.
Yeah, and it's just
I
like,
love that movie.
It's pretty. I mean, it's offensive by 2019
It is so
standards.
offensive, but so is every Richard Pryor Gene Wilder movie. Like if you go back and watch the movies the two of them made together, oh
Yeah,
man,
they didn't give a fuck. Let's just be honest about it. So yeah, it's basically him driving him around as Uber, but his motivation, the motivation of the character of Stu, is legitimately, I need to get a 5-star rating because I won't be able to drive for Uber anymore if my rating drops below 4 stars.
So he needs to do whatever just to get a 5-star rating.
That's why
good,
he's like
motivation for a character in a movie.
That's why he's willing to do whatever for David Bautista. Secondary, like bullet point A, get 5-star rating. Bullet point B, have sex with my platonic friend Becca because I've been in love with her since college. Making Stu the most despicable male character in fiction since Ross from Friends.
Wow. I almost wonder if he was not intended to be, again, this is entirely sight unseen, so like, correct me if I'm wrong. But
so
I wonder
you're David Bautista here.
Yeah. Stupid. Stupid. I wonder if this if Stu was not intended to be such a big character. Like, I wonder if they built him up through rewrites, or maybe once they got Kumail and Johnny involved, if they were like, oh, we got to make this dude a more important character. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I wonder if this was really supposed to be so much more of a focus on Dave Bautista's character, and like, and Stu existed in scripts, but like as like an offhanded joke, because like I'll take that as like an offhanded motivation for an Uber driver to put up with some bullshit for a couple of scenes. But for a whole movie, that's when you kind of lose me. I'm thinking specifically of Deadpool, right?
Yeah, that was I'm like, it's Dopinder, really.
Yeah,
it would be like, it'd be a great way to make Dopinder a character for the whole movie of Deadpool instead of those 2 times he needs a cab.
Except not, right? Because one of the things that Deadpool does super well, and this is going to come across as jokier than I mean it, but like it dances with subtlety really well. For a movie that is so bombastic, it dances with subtlety in a way that makes the bombastic nature work, which might be part of the reason, by the way, why Deadpool 2 doesn't necessarily work for you so much, is it kind of throws that subtlety out the window in a lot of places.
That's actually, that's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
And that, especially since subtlety cannot, it's like light cannot exist without dark, or like it's one of those things. It's one of those things where like if you don't temper the balls to the wall insanity with some like reality, none of them is fun. And I think that's why the Once Upon a Deadpool thing, where it's literally portrayed as a fairy tale being told to somebody, it's like, I don't care that it's all fake and crazy.
Because on some level, we're shown the other side of the seesaw through all of the storytelling parts, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
It's a weird temperament right there. So they build this character up, and it's like one of those things where I don't like you either, because why are you co-signing on a spin gym with this girl to maybe get with her? And then, like, spoilers for Stuber, which are words I never thought I would honestly have to say. Like, 20 minutes into the movie, it's revealed that he and the girl have hooked up once. Like, and not in college, but like a year ago. So it's like, so you've never made a move? Like,
Also, weirdly, the MacGuffin you've been chasing this whole time is completely negated, not just because, as all MacGuffins, we find out that they're not the true end game, but also you already got this thing, man. Like, that's weird. It's real weird.
yeah. So then the
Turns
thing,
her into an object and then throws her away as one
right?
as well.
Well, and that's the thing, because it not only does it objectify her, but then she's like, "I want you to come over so we can do the thing again." And the thing is sex, and it's just like, so that's why he's like, I need this 5-star rating, but also I want to get over there and have sex with this girl that I'm in love with. But at this point, is she even a girl that I'm in love with, or is she just an act to conquer? So, like, you want to talk about toxic masculinity and someone glorifying that part of this movie? No. The part of this movie that's, like, weirdly glorified is that other side of it. Like, toxic beta-ism? Like, I don't know even what you would call that.
Well, right, and so like I think where the reading comes in, and this is me putting on like some
fine.
heavy fucking like costume work here to pretend to be the side of the conversation, all right? But I think the conversation comes from that argument comes from they're showing you worst of the worst as an attempt to show you how terrible these people are, right? Like that idea, and this is something that we want to talk about the idea of the difference in comedy between right wing and left wing. Like right wing comedy, they think that what comedy is pretending to be the other person and making them look like a fool, whereas left wing will show you the ideal and still find the humor in it, right? And I think that is, I think the best example of that is, do you remember when for like a hot second Fox News had their own Daily Show? They had their own, it was hourly news, half-hour hourly news or some bullshit joke like that. Like it was some weird joke like that, and they couldn't make it last for more than like, I don't know, like 6 or 7 episodes. I might be wrong. For all the fuck I know, it's still on and it's been going strong. But in my mind, it died. So like, but it's that idea that they couldn't pull off what the Daily Show ever pulled off because the comedy they were doing was things like or the NRA comedy show that was like this as well, where they put a bunch of fucking Thomas the Tank Engine characters in KKK hoods because they thought that's what comedy is, right? And so that is the idea, the concept of what is supposed to quote unquote be funny, and then when it can't be done right, they just say, well, then they're not good at comedy, and it's like, no, you never mind. So I think that's where the reading comes from. It's a complete misread, but it is seeing this and thinking that the humor is supposed to be coming from the idea that like, look at how terrible these people are, ha ha ha, and it's like, that's never funny to me. Like there are people out there that bathe in that humor, that love that humor, and it's shock jock humor that like just doesn't work for me anymore. You know, it's the Anthony Jeselniks, it's the Tosh. Is Tosh's last name?
Tosh, yeah, I think his name is Anthony Tosh.
No, Anthony Jeselnik is a different dude.
But I think that then there's also Anthony Tosh.
That's amazing.
No, Daniel Tosh. It's Daniel Tosh.
Okay, Daniel Tosh. Okay. I was gonna say, yeah. So like, it's those dudes that like that have that idea of just like, we're gonna be terrible because nobody could possibly be this terrible, right? And then somebody goes out to a fucking rally and hits somebody with a car. But like that's the kind of shit that happens. And so you read something like Stuber, where like you're supposed to find humor in these dudes that are being the worst versions of themselves, and it just falls flat. Clearly, like we're not talking about Stuber as like this comedy that did super well and we just happened to dislike, right? As I lump myself in with you, despite the fact I haven't seen it, but I'm pretty fairly certain I would be with you on a lot of this. But like it falls into that, right? It falls into that cesspit of just like, isn't this funny? And it's like, no, dude, like you don't understand what's funny.
Yeah, it's not. It's boring. Like after the movie, Dale and I the moment where Dale and I looked at each other and it was like no words exchanged, but it was very clear we need to have a discussion about what we just did with our Sunday night was, again, spoilers for Stuber. After the whole night's events, right? They're both in the hospital because Stu ends up taking a bullet for Natalie Morales' character. And, and David Bautista is all beat up because he's been running around like a blind Hulk the whole movie.
Right.
And they're in the hospital, and, he gives him a 5-star rating. And it's like, literally, that was supposed to be the payoff. Like, that, you wanted me to be like, oh, it all worked out. No, it didn't.
Yeah. See, in a more artistic hands, it feels like what that's supposed to be is a moment of like, do you see how pointless this really was? Like, with everything going on around us right now, and this is like, I'll do this, but like, it has basically made your entire motivation like moot and pointless. And that can be interesting, or, like when you realize that the entire time they've been fighting for something that is really kind of meaningless. But like,
we'll talk about, I'll talk about exactly like that type of joke working. Is Archer 1999, the 4th episode, spoilers, I guess, for Archer. They get eaten by a space nautilus, and they end up, getting out of it. And then at the very end, Cheryl, that character, Shirlene, whatever you want to call that character, she was outside of the Nautilus because she's a fighter pilot in Archer 1999. So she had deployed into her ship and was attacking it to try to let them get away. And so they get out of it, and she docks with them, and she's like, so how'd you guys escape? And they say, well, we were able to generate an extra boost with some fuel rods. And she's like, oh, you found my extra fuel rods? Good, I was hoping you guys would know that I had them down there. And it's like, so everything that just happened was pointless. Everything that you just experienced for that half hour was pointless. But in a way, that was the joke. And both of us, Dale and I, laughed at that because it was like, oh yeah, if they just like didn't look into the monster for an answer and instead looked internally, it would have been done.
Right. Well, again, there's a deft hand there. There's a really good talent behind that is making that work. Right. I was thinking weirdly of a random pull in my like nightly rewatches of Family Guy as I have it on as I fall asleep. I just did the whole Stewie kills Lois, Lois kills Stewie like storyline, and the whole ending joke of that entire 3-episode arc is it was all a dream. And there's an entire like 5 minutes of Brian just being like, so this is just a big old fuck you, huh? Because none of this actually happened, huh?
No, Brian, it was a simulation. But if someone were watching and invested,
and say what you will about like about Family Guy and its handling of material, like that moment works on a really great level, right?
Yeah, that is one of those. That has been on all the time. Like, I think I've seen that episode the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, right.
Because it's just weirdly the 3 syndications all sort of lined up.
Yeah, between TBS, Adult Swim, and Fox. Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, cool. I mean, I like these 2 episodes. I really liked the mermaid joke. I think that's my favorite joke in the whole thing is, usually it's a man on top and a fish on the bottom. Why? What would you do with that? Well, it's just a fantasy. Like,
oh my god! Boom. So we got to do it.
No. I try to do my Lois, and it's always awful because I get in my way. It reminds me, we were in Norway. We were riding on a train, and we were talking to some people from England, and they're like, "Where are you from?" And my mother goes, "Oh, we're from Rhode Island." And the husband like hit the wife, and he's like, "I knew it. She sounds like Lois Griffin."
Not a compliment.
And my mom goes, "Oh, Peter," and he's like, "No, you don't need to do it. You just sound like Lois Griffin."
Oh god!
It's just one of those moments that I'm like, this is gonna stay with me forever.
Man.
because we don't hear it, but you know, we hear it. And it's yeah, so that's the thing. Like Stuber just every opportunity, and I think one of the worst parts is that there was like a lack of continuity even within scenes.
Oh,
Like
what?
like like David Bautista can't see. Oh, but he can kind of see now. Oh, he just shot that guy point blank in the head. How did he do that if he's blind? Oh, well, Stu threw a can of dog food towards the guy, and then he was able to shoot that guy in the head. Why? How? How did that work?
You know how I can tell that Stuber's a terrible movie is every time you talk about a scene in it, I can think of immediately a movie that does it better. And like not even a good one, like not even like a historically beloved one. I can just think of movies I've seen recently that do that exact joke and do it so good. Have you watched Murder Mystery yet?
No,
The
I haven't.
Jennifer Aniston,
I
Adam
really
Sandler.
want to.
I actually got to say I recommend it. I won't say that it's like mind blowing. It's not like a career saver for anybody, but it also isn't a career ruiner for anybody involved. Like it's a decent little Agatha Christie like spoof film. Like I enjoyed it and would watch again. Like that's how I feel about it. But there is a joke in that movie about what a terrible shot he is, and of course, you know, like the big climactic moment of the movie, he finally takes a shot and it's a good one. Like that is the joke in the moment, and it's awesome. Like it builds to that. It's a release. It's a cathartic moment of like, oh, this thing you thought he couldn't do this whole time, and he could do it just for that 1 second. And you're just like, yeah, like I'm behind this character. I like if it's not that, then yeah, it's just a lack of continuity. Like,
yeah, it's and the worst of, like things that bothered me is like halfway through these two, like they've been to 3 locations together. Stu and Vic. Vic is David Bautista's character's name. And they've been talking the whole time, and then at the 3rd location, after not before the shootout that I just described, he's like, "This is the guy that killed your partner." That was never said. It was never brought up that like the reason I need you to drive is because we're hunting down the man who killed my partner.
they've never had the moment where like they get close to each other and he tells this back like. That's the whole point of the buddy cop comedy.
Right.
There's that moment where they like lose themselves in each other and you realize that they're actually best friends.
Nope, that doesn't happen because they're antagonistic towards each other literally the entire film. And also, there's a moment, like, he calls him Steve the whole movie. And it's all building to this moment where they break into that sporting goods store to steal guns and ammo. And Jimmy Tatro comes up and is like, "Stuber, is that you?" And he's like, and first of all, David Bautista laughs at it. And again is like, "'Cause your name is Stu and you drive Uber." And then Jimmy Tatro calls him Stuber again, and he goes, "His name is Stu." And like, you can tell that was supposed to be a big moment. Like it was the first time that he actually called him Stu and not Steve.
Right.
But there's like an offhand moment earlier where he's like, "Stu, I really need your help." And I'm like, oh, was that like the Bond moment where like, "I'm sorry, I've been calling you Steve this whole time." Like,
oh no.
But dude, but then after that like offhanded Stu, he still continues to call him Steve until that moment in the outside the box sporting goods store.
Yeah. They didn't have a good continuity editor on site, I bet.
They didn't have a good continuity on the script, Sejohn. That's
Yeah.
like script level issues.
Well, I mean, a lot of these comedies, and again, without seeing it, so maybe I'm wrong about this one, but a lot of these comedies nowadays are also just done on like offhand, like improv style. So like, like some of that stuff might literally be coming down to just like, you're supposed to just say this basically. And like Dave Bautista, who, God love him, probably is not the best improv actor yet. I mean, maybe.
Oh,
I mean,
don't say that. He was in the WWE.
That's true. That's not like, you're not wrong. That is a good point. But that's what I mean is like, I think the dude is fantastic when he's told what to do. I have yet to see him in a situation where he kind of gets to do his own thing. And so I almost wonder if parts of this are literally like him just kind of just in the moment, just saying what he feels the character should say. He says Stu because like that's where he is in that moment. And there isn't a continuity editor that would be like, oh, actually, you wouldn't call him that yet. Redo that shot and just say Steve. Just you know what I mean? Like
really,
there should be a
really
person
liked what you brought to that, but you're still calling him Steve at this point.
Right. Yeah. That's all it takes. Is just that one moment of just saying that sort of shit. And when that doesn't happen, It's super noticeable. Like the fact that like if it was said, you wouldn't think about it, but if it wasn't said, like it wasn't, then suddenly it's just the biggest glaring thing in the whole movie, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was weird. It was just, yeah. So that's Stuber. And now, Sejohn, with the time that we have left, lift us up with all the Comic Con goodie drippings.
So I mean, there's a whole bunch of good stuff coming out of Comic Con. Go check out like fucking trailers galore and all of that stuff. I am feeling a little bit better, and I was already feeling good about the Square Enix Avengers. Has that changed for you at all?
Oh no, that totally, like, I was surprised when I shared the article with our little group and Zach said, I'm still not convinced. Because it
He's a
kind of,
grumpy old
I
person.
understand that he's a grumpy old person because I'm like, well, one of the big issues was that they all looked super generic. And the fact that they're like, no, 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 we're going to do it like the Spider-Man PS4, and you're going to have the option to kind of make them look however you want. On top of that, apparently they're just going to put the character editor in from Saints Row. So you can do
Right.
whatever you want, like literally
Yeah.
whatever you want.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I think that that's one of the things that people were not thinking about coming out of E3, and this is not. I mean, this is on Square Enix. I don't mean to be like in defense of them at all because they did some poor messaging on a lot of this and still are like they're still not getting out.
Yeah,
good.
like it's the thing is that while I feel better about it because I don't feel the way that I felt when I'm just like these just look like generic dudes.
Yeah.
The thing that I still would like to see is gameplay, especially in the
Yes.
wake of Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 and the fact that it is very much, we're trying to push play with 4 people.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see when we do finally get to see some gameplay, and we should see it sooner than later because that game's coming out real soon.
Coming out
Like
in
that's
May.
the other weird
Yeah,
thing.
so
Yeah, it's getting more and more interesting. So I'm excited about that. I think the big thing that we probably should address in our time here is Marvel, its lineup, and the weird anti like reaction to it going on at the moment. Have you heard anything about any of this?
No, every reaction I've seen has been hyper positive.
Well, so that's the thing is I'm not addressing like a major voice in any of this. It's something that I think that you and I are uniquely placed to talk about because we are the assholes that are willing to talk about it. And that is that there's a lot of people that are very happy about Marvel's new lineup, specifically in the sense of like diversity and the way that it's kind of like really kind of branching out and doing some things that to put all my cards on the table, I feel like Marvel should have been doing all along, but I am glad that we're there. That's where I'm at as a person. That's how I feel. So some of the reaction to it has been a little weird. Some people who have been coming out being like, we shouldn't be patting Marvel on the back for their diverse lineup. They should have been doing this all along. So there's like this really weird adverse reaction because there's some people that are calling it pandering. There's some people that feel like it's too little too late. There's some people that feel like it's still not enough. A lot of that sort of weird stuff going on. And I just felt like a need to kind of get my own like kind of feelings about that out in the mix because it is a delicate situation. And if I wait any longer, I feel like I'm going to say something and come down on the wrong side of history. And I don't want to be that guy. I want to get out early enough that I can start correcting myself as things come out.
Then the floor is yours.
No, man. Like I said, my cards are on the table. Like, I feel like they are finally doing some things that, yes, maybe they should have been doing all along. Like, anybody would be hard pressed to argue that Marvel has not been doing enough in terms of representation on screen. Like, they needed to be doing more of it. My feelings are, they are. Like, hey, they are. Like, you're talking about essentially the epitome of like old white dudes who have been in the room for 15 years now playing, making the rules, really. Like, they have been laying down the groundwork and the rules. And it's really hard. And maybe this is because I'm 30 something years old and I've seen it. I've seen what the world was like before. So any progress feels good. But it's hard to get like people who have been making money to change their minds about how they've been making money. You know what I mean? Because as far as they're concerned, they've been making this money. Why would they ever change? I think we have a really great prime counterexample of that in Warner Brothers. Like you looking at WB, and they seem to refuse to budge on how they make their films because every single one of them makes $1 billion. So who gives a shit? They don't care that they're getting poor critical reaction. We've had this conversation a million times, right?
This is basically the cornerstone of the Say Report, is
Right.
that they only care about the monetary. They don't care about the art.
And that's
And
not fair. Like that's also
well,
not a
I
fair
mean,
thing
that's
to
not
say.
a fair
Like,
thing to say, but one of those things is when you look at what they've done, and to them making money, that's good. Thumbs up. And honestly, that seems like the mission from the beginning. It would be weird if they're like, "Oh, we made a bunch of money on this movie, but the critics didn't like it. Oh, then we got to completely change what our movies are." No, because their 5-year mission was to go out and make as much money as they could with their superheroes in the wake of Marvel showing that it was possible. Like,
that being said, Marvel did kind of have a reimagining of itself after Phase 2 kind of fell a little flat for a lot of people. You know, I mean, between Iron Man 3, Thor 2, like there were some movies in Phase 2 that were not critically or crowd pleasing, but they made their money. Like they definitely made their money. I mean, even to that point, Age of Ultron, like they really kind of took some lumps in terms of their criticism, or artistic criticism in those areas, right? And they, I think, really kind of stepped it up for how things went moving forward, you know. And so I'm really kind of excited to see what this new Marvel is now that they're in a position to not give a fuck. And I think that's where my psyche on the whole thing is kind of differently breaking from this, again, admittedly smaller group that is people that want Marvel to do better, but just can't seem to get behind Marvel finally doing it now that they've got enough money where they feel like they can play it, like they don't have to play it safe anymore. And I get that. Like I get that mentality. Like they waited so long, and of course now that they're too big to fail, they're going to do this kind of stuff. But in a way, it almost feels like they had to be here in order to make some of these moves, and the world shouldn't be that way. Like I'm not celebrating that fact. Like they should have been able to be like this from the get-go, but in a lot of ways I get why they couldn't be, and that feels weird because it feels like I'm kind of defending like a system that should not be in place. You know, it feels really weird being a Marvel fan right now, and seeing where Marvel's going to be in a lot of different ways. This is just a way I guess I wasn't expecting.
okay, so the best reaction that I saw to this new slate of Marvel is it feels like the shackles are off now that they've completed the Infinity Saga.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, that is 100,000% true. 100,000 is not proper way to say numbers. Because think of those movies that occurred within the confines of the Infinity Saga that did representation, and that think of Black Panther and think of Captain Marvel, two like objectively excellent films. Like just in terms of filmmaking, if they were not tied to the larger saga, they would have been enjoyable movies.
Still enjoyable, despite
despite that. But then think of how those magnificent films were folded into the larger whole. Like think of like one of Dale's big complaints about Endgame is that they wasted Captain Marvel. And after seeing that movie, it's real easy to say, well, they wasted her. I mean, say what you will about DC and everything that they've done. They did not waste Wonder Woman in Justice League after the film Wonder Woman was a huge success.
No, but I challenge you to go back and watch Batman versus Superman when they touted the introduction of Wonder Woman, and then she ended up in two scenes. And remember, there were a lot of people then that were super pissed after being sold a bill of goods that Wonder Woman was in this movie too. She's straight up in the trailer. One of her two scenes is in the trailer.
Yes.
So like I think that's a more fair comparison than Justice League for the use of Wonder Woman versus Captain Marvel. I think you got to look at Batman versus Superman.
Okay, but Batman versus Superman came first, so it's not a 1-to-1 comparison. The reason
No,
that I
it's not a
compare the
one-to-one.
two that I'm comparing is Captain Marvel happened, and people dug that movie a lot. People really liked Captain Marvel, but
Right,
Endgame was already basically done at that point,
right,
where Wonder Woman came out and the world friggin' lost their minds over Wonder Woman, as they should have. I
right,
still love that movie.
right.
And part of the retooling of Justice League felt like it was to give her more focus.
That might be the case. But yeah, again, I think another reason why I don't think comparing Endgame to Justice League is fair is that Endgame was filming at the same time and basically
Right,
done,
no,
as
I'm
you
not,
said.
but I'm
Yeah.
not, but I'm not saying, I'm just saying, like, that's one feather that Warner Brothers can put in their hat is that they had this movie that had a groundbreaking female character and
That made more
understood,
money.
yeah,
That made a fuck ton of money, and they thought, "Ooh, this will make us more money. Let's do this thing."
yes,
That's the
but
feather.
okay, but yes, I understand that. But also think about the representation of Black Panther, of
Yes.
T'Challa
Yeah.
in Infinity War and in Endgame.
Oh,
Basic,
underused completely.
yeah,
Yeah.
completely underused. So, like, is it better that they were working on these things? Because clearly they had to have been working on Shang-Chi and Jane Foster as Thor and coming back with Blade. I mean, Blade stuff had been rumored for a while.
Yeah.
That like surprised everybody, but I'm like, weren't they talking about this? Like, this is the only one like I personally had any knowledge of
Yeah.
before
No,
this
the only
started.
surprise for me with the Blade release was that I was 100% convinced they were going to do it with Wesley Snipes.
Right. And
And there's a
especially
little
in the
piece of me
wake
that's
of
sad,
J. Jonah
but
Jameson. Like,
well, right, exactly. And there's a little piece of me that's sad that it's not him, but also, I mean, way to win me right back by, you know what I mean?
yeah. Yeah, by one of the greatest living actors.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he's fantastic. And I'm excited to see it. But, like, would it be better if, because clearly the Infinity stuff was mapped out and they knew what they were going to do, though the reveal that apparently Thanos was going to rip off Cap's head in the final fight that came out today. Which,
Yeah.
like maybe it wasn't all scripted out, but would it have been better to have these movies that celebrate these characters, but then in the big movie that brings everybody together, they're kind of shuffled off to the side to focus on them? Or do you want them to have the center stage, to be able to stand tall in the spotlight and actually get what they deserve?
Yeah, man. Like I said, it's a sticky conversation to really kind of wade into, which is why I want to do it early before there's like any other footsteps I get accused of following in, before there's anybody out there that like says or does something that like I am slow supporting and then suddenly have to retract that support of before any of this shit happens. Things are going to get weird with Marvel. I think that's the biggest thing that I learned about this, and weird in ways that we may not be expecting.
Yeah. The only complaint I have about Marvel is that all the stuff that's going to be on Disney Plus is stuff that I'm excited about.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I really want to see a Loki show. I want to see a Hawkeye show. WandaVision is a terrible name because it just sounds
Yeah.
like I wish it were. Seriously, Wanda and the Vision. There's a better title. WandaVision sounds very, and here's what it looked like from the eyes of Wanda Maximoff.
Yeah, it's there's some things that are a little hokey and Disney-ish going on that are I think that's starting to show itself a little bit. Yeah, man, that's the other thing about Comic-Con. Super excited for Disney Plus now.
Yeah, and I'm still kind of standing where I'm standing with Disney Plus, where I'm not 100% sure if they're gonna so the Toy Story 2 thing happened, right? Where we get to bookend with Kelsey Grammer. They get rid of that scene from the bloopers because it's like references Me Too. That one doesn't really bother me, but like omitting the whole end act of a film, like I don't know how you do that. And it's very strange to me that that's what they're going to do with Dumbo.
Yeah.
And I've read, and something came to me when we were, because we're going to be recording something about Lunatics Unleashed at some point. Ooh, cat's out of the bag. That like Warner Brothers and what they put on their DVDs, and like this is representative of the time that it was made. These opinions do not necessarily reflect those of Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
Where it's like, that's a pretty great way to like say, like, we want to present this as history. We don't want to.
For sure.
It's
Disney will always be in that position of never wanting you to think about time. They literally want everything they do to be timeless. So like they're in a position where they've put themselves in this really weird position with things that they've done in the past of wanting you to not think about what things used to be like. They want you to just kind of enjoy things in the moment. And it's creepy. It's real creepy. But it's the same idea where like where once you get into Disney, you don't really see a way out unless you go one very particular way. like that sort of thing. It's almost on like a casino level of there are no clocks. Like you know what I mean? Like they don't want you to think about those sorts of things when you're in Disney. And I mean that both Disney World, Disneyland, and also sitting in your house watching a Disney thing. They don't want you to be thinking about things like how things used to be and all that sort of stuff. And it's not. I'm not defending it.
No, I don't. It doesn't sound like you're defending it at all. So don't even worry. It's a very succinct like summation of what they do, because you're not wrong. That is a weird thing where a lot of their stuff is timeless that I had never even really considered.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I don't know. It's just weird. And especially, like, The Lion King coming out in CG and the fact that the 2009 DVD release also apparently edited a bunch of stuff and people just, like, accepted it and moved on.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's, like, that stuff come to light is that I have really noticed it this year, and maybe it's because it's something that I have. Dumbo was a weird one. It hit me very odd, especially because I saw their live-action adaptation of it in order to preserve the licensing or whatever the things that people say, like, real cynically about why they remake all their movies that unfortunately have some truth behind them, and how they handled, like, a dicey situation. And then for that to come out and be like, oh, but also on Disney Plus, we're going to be editing Dumbo. I'm like, that's weird that you want your cake and to eat it too. Like, I don't. And it,
yeah. Well, I mean, the licensing stuff is weird because they would figure out a way to do it no matter what. This at least benefits me as a fan because I get something to chew on.
Yes. And that's, I mean, it's just so weird because, like, it's the stuff I want to watch, but I still feel a little, like, queasy about supporting Disney Plus.
Yeah.
And
I mean, that's a fair feeling to have, man. Like that's a totally fair feeling to have because you're an informed consumer. And I mean, I think that's the big thing that I think the four of us were talking about this with all the shit people have been giving Lion King is that everybody is more informed nowadays than they used to be. Point blank fact. I'm not afraid to say that. Like, I don't think anybody would argue that with me. Everybody nowadays thinks more about the things that they consume. Now, the key is that hasn't stopped anybody from consuming those things. So what everybody's become really good at is becoming that savvy consumer. And I say that with like an asterisk at the end, air quotes around it. Like they act like they are savvy. They like to say these things. They like to talk shit about movies. They like to talk about why this is bad, that's bad. They'll still go out and eat it, but they'll talk about how bad it tasted afterwards, right? And it's because they feel like because they're saying these really great, smart, intelligent things about this and that they feel like they can get away with still consuming. And I think that's what it comes down to, is it's a way for people to get away with still being fat Americans, like plain and simple. Like it is a way for us to still get away with being the asshole, but we get to feel better about it because we're being a righteous asshole.
Yeah, which there's that whole scene in Frasier where he's like, oh, I can't drink beans from Kenya because of this. And like, it's just like, wow, that was real, like, prophetic, that stupid joke in the second season of Frasier.
Yeah, man.
Of what activism would be in the future of America.
I'm not a fan of the term slacktivism, but I think
I've never even heard that term, but you're not wrong.
Selectivism is the idea where you'll get on Facebook and talk about how terrible like a politician is, but then you won't do anything like going door to door to like convince people not to vote. Like
Right.
you'll just sit on Facebook and from the comfort of your armchair at home, you'll talk about how terrible the world is, but you won't do anything about it. But I do believe that within that term is a grain of truth. Like we have hit a point where people are very happy to talk about how terrible A, B, and C are, but they're not going to make an effort to change A, B, or C. And I'm not even saying you have to, and I'm not saying that somehow negates your point. I'm just saying you have to remember that when you're listening to these people from their armchairs. You have to remember that on top of that, there's still going to be the guy that buys the first ticket to see the next Marvel movie.
Right. Oof. Ugh. I don't know how we are. I do. I know how we make this better. So if you want to talk to Sejohn about his feelings on Marvel and what they're going to be doing with Phase 4, you can find him on Twitter at Siege versus the World.
And if you want to go ahead and buy Devin I was going to say a prescription to Disney Plus, which is the funniest thing ever when people call it about their Netflix prescriptions. If you want to buy him a subscription to Disney Plus, you can find him at Devin D. Decker.
So until next time, hey baby, I hear the blues are calling, toss salads and scrambled eggs. Mercy. And baby, I seem a bit confused, yeah maybe, but I got you pegged.
Oh!
But I don't know what to do with those tossed salads and scrambled eggs. They're calling again. Will, take us home!
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devon Decker and Sejohn Serwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report, and you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so it's delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.